All right. In international relations, one specific area where you can expect questions is resource geography and the corresponding politics, geopolitics around it. Right. So you know that lithium and the rare earth minerals are very important for understanding the journey of India from a fossil fuel economy towards green fuels. So this green transition trend is contingent on our access to certain minerals like lithium. All right. So in this context, what we are trying to do is pick up the world geography, geomorphology topics, the previous year questions and the trends therein in geography, how certain trends were picked up, and we will be mapping it to the access to these resources and geopolitics. So there is a three-layered architecture in the class today. What are the three layers? At the basic level, you have geography. You will be looking at mountain systems. Second is transition, energy transition as a theme. Third level is resource geography and the associated current affairs and the traps that UPSC can lay for us. Most likely, you might get one question from this region. One of the three areas you can get a question. So together we will be packaging the current affairs and the static part so that you can finish them within the class itself. Okay. So in order to appreciate this, you will have to understand the basic geography of mountain systems. Okay. So if you take a look at the questions in mountain systems, where are these mountains distributed? The fold mountains, block mountains, and how to remember them. This is linked to our resources. Okay. Geography determines our resources, right? So we will be looking at the core geography part. And when you're looking at this core geography part, also you're looking at the evolution of the questions and then the current affairs part. Clear? Let's begin. Now, if you begin by the analysis of the world geography questions from 1995 till 2025, the last 30 years, you can broadly club these questions into these categories. The theme number one is they will try to test your understanding of spatial logic. What do you mean by spatial logic? Wherever these resources or geographical features are spread, they will try to see if you have a clear-cut visualization. Can you remember the visual map? These were the initial set of questions. If there is any break in that, let's say from east to west, west to east, if there is any such kind of a, yes? If there is any such continuity or any such break, that anomaly will be picked up by UPSC and it will be asked like a question. That is one thing. If there is any specific, resource, let's say in our current affairs discussion, we'll be talking about lithium. Lithium is associated with lithium triangle. Okay. But this is the common knowledge. Having said that, there can be some traps. The three countries associated with lithium, usually people associate with largest reserves and largest production. Is that true or false? This is what they will be testing. Then classification. Different landforms will have different types of classification. For example, volcanoes are of different kinds, islands are of different kinds, mountains are of different kinds, river drainage patterns are of different kinds. How are they spread across the world? That can be one sort of a question. Next, geo-economic dominance. In today's world, you don't have to, again, I don't have to clearly specify the reason why, the entire foreign policy of America, United States of America, is designed is because of resources only. What did Greenland do to America? A very small nation with very meager, roughly around 3 billion valuation, like GDP, which is less than some of the top, companies that US has. But US wants access to that. Why? Why Venezuela, Iraq, Iran? It's all about resources. So your politics are always tied to access to these resources. So your geography, your international relations and economy, they're all fused together on a global map. And you are expected to understand it like a comprehensive unit where one, if you disturb, the other will get impacted. Clear? With this logic, let us approach the basic parts. And within the class, I'm trying to give you some visual aids so that you can memorize things better. Okay. Now, if you go by the sub-themes that are usually asked in previous year questions, these are some of the sub-themes. And today we will be confining ourselves to the first two themes, the most important ones according to me for 2026. Okay. What are these sub-themes? I'll give you a list here. First, mountain systems and physiography. Last year also, you have seen a question: which of the following countries are, within the coverage of Andes Mountains? Okay, that is one sort of a question. So you will get mountain systems, different kinds of mountains. We will try to see the exceptions which you will have to memorize. It is difficult to memorize everything. We will see the exceptions that you have to memorize. Secondly, when you're talking about the resources and economic geography, you will be talking about how they are distributed across the world and what sort of technological limitations will either force us or stop us. Not just technological, sometimes even policy measures. Let's say if the country wants to maintain, a green, green economy, like we want to emphasize on a sustainable lifestyle, they will choose not to tap into those resources. So either technology or policy choices will determine whether a country will use that resource or not. That will also be a part of our current understanding, which will be used for our option elimination. That is one more thing. Then after that, basins, rivers, and the logic of drainage patterns. If you look at history, we have discussed this time and again, civilizations thrived on the banks of rivers. So important cities across the world and how climate change is impacting these cities, how climate change is actually changing the river drainage patterns, this can be a point of contention. That is not going to be discussed in today's class, but anyway, nevertheless, highlighting it today. Okay, this is one more theme. Then previously, somewhere around 1995 to 2005, in the first decade of our 30-year analysis, this sort of direct GK sort of questions were asked. I'm sure this kind of direct questions will no longer be asked in UPSC, but these cities were asked because they were important. There is some logic, right? So if those important cities are again in use for a different reason, you will have to know them and map it to this previous year questions. That is why you will be seeing some of these important cities in the rivers also. For example, Lucknow is on which rivers? How many of you must have thought that Ganga is the answer? If you are not from northern part of the country, what would your answer be? Where is river Sarayu? If people get confused between Varanasi and Ayodhya, it's possible, right? The so-called silly mistakes. These are blunders, but nevertheless, people make these blunders. So, places in news and the associated rivers and the cities are definitely important. Your rivers will be the basis of classification for the topics. Okay, use them as anchor points to divide your mapping. North of it, south of it, east, west. Okay, use this as a pattern. Finally, famous islands, seas, any geopolitical issues in news, conflict zones, any environmentally important areas, let's say any ocean bodies or specific straits, if they are in news for climate change related issues, we will discuss them as well. Okay, these are the broad thematic categories. Let's begin with mountain systems. You all know the basic mountain systems and how they are formed. Okay, this is not a geography class, but nevertheless, a quick revision. What are the different kinds of mountains? Fold mountains, block mountains. Across the world, what is the most dominant form of mountain? Is it the block mountains or fold mountains? 90% of the mountain systems across the world are fold mountains. Okay, how are fold mountains formed? Convergence of continent. What about ocean and ocean? What will happen then? Which one will lead to fold mountains? Okay. Anyway, coming back. The 10% that you find across the world are block mountains. How are they formed? It is because of subduction, no, sorry, divergence. Okay, so this is the most dominant form, and this is where you will find you know those points on the map which will have significant impact on our climate. Most of the times they are like divides between two different climatic zones. For example, take the case of Himalayas. If Himalayas were not there, northern plains would be completely having very cold weather because of the Siberian winds. So they will block some kind of a weather pattern. It will create microclimate. Okay, if they're large enough, they will have a very distant climate. Clear? Now, with this context, let's go back and try to remember easily different kinds of mountains. So, if you are very confused about what mountains are fold, what mountains are block, just understand this analogy. Okay, but before we get to that, let us also look at the design pattern of how UPSC picks up those questions and places those statements. All right, if you take a look at this, most of the times what happens is they will swap. Examiners will swap the statements. Fold mountains will be asked as block, block as fold. And they will misplace the mountain systems across different continents. These are the two broadly known categories of mountain systems. Now, let's try to create some visual so that you can remember things better. I'm oversimplifying this through the use of this cartoon. If you know, or if you want to remember how fold mountains look like, take a look at the first thing. If you see two young cars, fast moving cars, collide head on, how do they look like? Visualize this. They collide and they create a sharp peak, and they will have hot fumes coming out of it because they're relatively young. Okay, you can still visualize and see that okay, the accident happened very recently, and you can visualize it like this. Compare that to a very old crashed car placed somewhere in a garage. Okay, over a period of time, because of the weather, it gets smoothened out, it gets rusted, corroded. It's a very old mountain. Okay, so you will see kind of flatness in their the topography. Then imagine a situation where you are moving on the road, there is some speed breaker kind of a thing, and suddenly because of that, within the car it snaps into half because of a weak point. This is like the faults. Okay, so these are the three major ways in which mountains are formed. Just for your visual analogy, I'm giving this cartoon. Don't take it literally. Now, Aravallis is in news. What kind of a mountain is Aravali? Fold mountain. Sure. Are they young? Old. So they must have been formed because of some convergence only. When do you think this must have happened? Is it before Himalayas or after Himalayas? Right? So just having a clarity on this will be at least good enough, because Aravallis is in news. Okay? Now, moving forward, is there any other fold mountain that you can think of in the world which is old, not new? Old as in 90% of the mountain systems in the world are fold. Within them, broadly speaking, Aravallis is one. There is one more old fold mountain in Australia, because this is again in news. Take a look at this. Okay, the Great Dividing Range, Australian range, is the home for a lot of mineral wealth which got completely destroyed because of mining, logging and other activities in Australia. Again, this is in news, so you might get a question here also. This is a old fold mountain. These two things you remember, Aravalli and Great Dividing Range. Okay, so just for your visual aid, again, I'm putting up different mountains here which are fold mountains. See, our tendency is to put Himalayas here, but I'm inverting it so that we are putting this as the point of focus. We anyway know this. This is where you will forget things. So I'm trying to use the psychological tendency of Indians to look to the right. We anyway remember that if you look to the right, you are more likely to remember this, right? So for that reason, I've placed them here. These are the important mountain ranges. Anyway, coming back. Okay. So one set of questions that can be asked: mountain ranges, shape. You will see long chains like arcs. A case to the point being Himalayas. But if you take a look at the block mountain, sorry, the block mountains across the world, especially in the context of India, the common misconception is Vindhya, Satpura, and Aravalli. If I club all of them and say all of these are block mountains, it is a mistake. Although all of them will have similar topography, they are worn out, etc. The reason for that wearing out in the case of Aravallis is different and Vindhya and Satpura is different. So this one distinction can be used against. Next, where will you find this mountains, like fold mountains or block mountains? Usually we'll find at the edge of continents or in the convergence zone, like the case of Himalayas, sandwiched between two major land masses. When you compare it with the block mountains, they're mostly present within the mainland or in the interior part. That is also one way to visualize. Broad rules I'm saying most of the times. Okay. So if I have to ask you to memorize the exception, what are the most important block mountains in the world? Where will you find them? I'm giving you this analogy. Just visualize this black viper sitting on a block of wood. Black is the Black Forest range in Germany. Viper was just in France and also Vindhyas, Satpura and Sierra Nevada in US, and Rhine in the valley between Vosges and Black Forest. Please write this down. This is one way to remember. If you are a big fan of mnemonics, you can use this. Otherwise, alternative way is this visual. Urals, Rockies, Alps, Himalayas, Andes Mountains and Atlas Mountains. That is a mnemonic. If you want to use it, you can use it. If you are good with visuals, use this visual. Whatever works for you. Alright, let's move forward. Now, the current affairs part. There is a news which has been recurring again and again for the past 3-4 years. Associated, sensational posts on social media claim that Africa will split into two halves. But it's not going to happen next week or the next year or 10 years after this. It's a very long drawn process. But in this context, since discussions are happening in the realm of geology, you need to know the names associated with this, because not only this region is environmentally very sensitive, it is also a very important conflict zone. This conflict zone is because of the historical, injustice that is doled out to Africa. If you take a look at the African map, they're in perfect rectangle square shape, as if they're cutting a slice of a cake. It's unscientific in nature, and that unscientific methodology for drawing the boundaries of Africa in the aftermath of the World War II has led to continuous conflicts, political instability in this region. On the top of that political reality, we have an underlying geography, which is anyway causing trouble. If you take a look at the Sahel region, the Great Lakes region, which is relatively prosperous when you compare it with the Northern African part, even there you will have instability. Why? Because political reasons. Nevertheless, to make matters worse, if this region is also tectonically unstable, it is prone to disasters. If you can expect earthquakes in this region, it is going to make the lives of people even more vulnerable. Because of the convergence of these multiple vulnerabilities, this topic becomes very important. Clear? So you will have to know some facts about this and also the possibilities. On the top of it, if you have to remember stuff, practice the previous year questions with respect to the resources in this region, you will remember things better. Especially topics, old NCRTs will discuss this Africa as a continent and the associated resources. We'll be discussing it in our regular classes. We'll see how to approach them. All right. Now, this is the news. What is the logic here? It's saying that the African continent is going to experience a great drift. So, what is the concept you have to know? When it is moving apart, is it a convergent boundary or a divergent boundary? Obviously, it is a divergent boundary. What are the plates? Nubian plate and the Somali plate. Please remember these names. Nubian plate and the Somali plate. Take a look at this Gulf of Aden. On the map, you need to know where is Gulf of Aden. Okay. If you are having anthropology optional, you must be knowing this place, Afar. What is the significance of this place? Any idea? It is considered to be the earliest, point where humanity has taken its genesis, Africa, the Afar Triangle. Earliest fossils were found there, which gives us an understanding of how humanity evolved. And when it is dating back to that old history, obviously, even in the present times, it is going to be relevant. And it is because of this reason, you need to know the importance of Afar Triangle. You need to know where is Ethiopia, where is Eritrea, and why this place is a convergence of three plates: Nubian, Somali, and Arabian plates. So you can't remember all the tectonic plate names, but at least the ones which are in news, at least the ones which are asked in the previous year questions, you need to know. Clear? So that is the takeaway. Next up, the topic that we were discussing. From 2024, the issue that we are discussing is lithium reserves are found in India in two different places. Why is lithium important? It is important for our e-vehicles. In general, about batteries we are talking. Energy storage as a theme, if you're talking, lithium becomes important as a component of that battery storage system. That's why in this energy transition story, lithium discovery becomes a very big news automatically, which will force us to think of this topic in a complete 360-degree manner. Where did you find it? Why only there? How to extract it? Why should we extract it? If not, what will happen? These are the multiple questions which we should ask, so that any question that comes should be logically addressed. Where? This is the first question. Where did we find lithium resources? Two different places: Jammu and Kashmir, Mandya district of Karnataka. Quick question. Do you think there is a similarity in the geography there? Jammu and Kashmir, Mandya. Where is this Mandya district? Karnataka. What is the geography here? Both are mountains. So, similar geography. Okay, let me ask a even refined question. What kind of a rock will you find here? Jammu and Kashmir, sedimentary. Mandya, metamorphic. Why? Why sedimentary? Why metamorphic? What is the process involved there? Yes? Did you read your basic geography? Why sedimentary rocks are formed? Why metamorphic rocks are formed? This is there in your 11th class textbook. In the same 11th class Indian part, Dharwad rock system, Himalayan rock system, Trans-Himalayan mountain range, the difference between these systems, what is the meaning of lineament, all of this are discussed, right? So your homework would be to understand what kind of a rock system is present in what place and why. Go back to your geography and do this research. Okay? Now, let's go back to the news. So, if you take a look at how our lithium resources are discovered, and the usual nomenclature associated with this process, you will notice G1, G2, G3, G4 kind of a wording in the news items. So the first question you need to understand is, what are these classifications? So if you take a look at the nomenclature, G4, G3, G2, G1 in official nomenclature of Geological Survey of India. Quick question. Geological Survey of India is under which ministry? Earth Sciences. Sure. Not mines? 100%. Okay. Anyway, we'll come back to that. G4, G3, G2, G1. So basically, if you take a look at how exploration surveys happen, when a news comes out, you have to read the headlines very carefully. Lithium inferred in Jammu and Kashmir is the news item in 2023 and 2024. Did they say we found, lithium resources? No. Basically, there are 4 levels of exploration. Long story short, these are the terms given. So basically, if you say G4, it's like you taking a flight and looking from above, we might find something there. Casually. It's a casual remark. It can be possible. So it's not a sure shot status. It's just that out of all the places in the world, you are narrowing down the possibility to a small place. Next level is prospecting. They will pick up samples from here and there and try to understand if lithium is indeed found there. Sample size. So just because you have a few samples, you cannot say the entire region will have lithium, right? That will be sampling bias. Next is general exploration. You will try to dig deeper in a specific location and say, okay, it might be possible. But having said that, it is not a logical conclusion to say just because you dug deeper in that place, if you find it across, like if you dig it across the entire area, you will find huge reserves, right? So Geological Survey of India will have a clarity on whether this reserves can be economically viable or not, depending on the level of sanction it gets from the government to carry out this service. At this point, you're only saying it is inferred, meaning we have just thought that it is possible to have this minerals. Okay, so this is the news. What is the other place we're talking about? Mandya. Okay, we'll get back to that. Now, another quick fact. Lithium triangle. Where will you find them? We all know this, South America. What are the countries? ABC. What are the ABC countries? Argentina, Bolivia, Chile. Okay. So, what are the usual problems faced by candidates when questions are asked from this area with respect to lithium? These are the problems. So, people remember it as ABC. And, of course, they won't make this kind of mistakes that they'll put Australia in lithium triangle. But if I club all the lithium producers and combine them, which of the following producers, arrange the following producers in the increasing order of their production levels or increasing order of their reserve levels, both are different. That's where the confusion occurs. Right. So you need to understand top reserves, in use famous areas, actual top producer. 3 different logical categories in your memory. Mixing both of them will cause errors in your exam. Okay. Now, take a look at this. China is the top processor of the minerals that you get. Australia has the top production levels. They're major players but not part of the triangle. Please understand this. Bolivia has the largest resources, but they don't exploit it as much. These facts you need to remember. Otherwise, UPSC will confuse you by mixing all of this. If I say that Bolivia has the largest, rather if I want to confuse you, I would say China has the largest resources of lithium in the world. Most likely you will think it is right because you remember China and top. This is called heuristic thinking. Unless you are explicitly told that this problem can occur, our mind does not become alert. In cognitive science, there are 2 systems our mind functions. There is this work called Thinking Fast and Slow by Daniel Kahneman. You must have heard about that book. Slow thinking and fast thinking. Fast thinking is for pattern recognition. It is necessary. Pattern recognition will help us in making quick decisions. Okay, it's like an algorithm. And slow thinking is for watching out for the exceptions. Pause, think. Is this always true? This kind of stop, pause, think, this kind of second slow system is what UPSC expects from you to clear this exam. Always we say that you have to focus on exceptions because most of the mistakes, the so-called silly mistakes, because you don't practice enough, because the questions are not designed like this, they're randomly designed most of the times. It is because of these reasons you will ignore the nuances. Just because you got good marks in a test series doesn't necessarily mean you will get good marks in UPSC, because you don't understand how questions are designed. It should actually be designed like this. If I have to design a trap, I will mix it with fast thinking and slow thinking. I will try to play around with your mind. Okay, so when you're consuming the content, you need to stop at these places, which usually most of us don't. And you don't form associations. What is necessary now is not only recognizing the patterns across the subjects, but also reflecting on the second order thinking of pausing and thinking and why these exceptions are there. So, if I am saying that Bolivia has largest resources and you are not exploring, you should immediately stop and ask, why is this? In the olden days, what people used to do is mug up and move on. But you should now stop. When the world is in crisis, when we want more lithium, when you say you have a lot of lithium, why are you not exploiting it? Because I don't have the technology to do so. That's why I'm not doing it. This simple, logical understanding is what UPSC expects from you. Clear? Moving on. What is the answer, guys? Please remember this. PIB, Mandya, lithium. What is the logic you have to remember here? Mandya and Riyasi district in Jammu and Kashmir. This place, Mandya, is having hard rock. The existing technology across the world, whether we are talking about the lithium triangle there or in Australia, we are talking about some other mining, it is easy to extract value out of it. And if I am an investor and want to set up a factory or some mining activity in that region, it should be economically viable, right? But it has a very meager 1600 tons. This place, Mandya. So, I know that it is very, I have lithium resources here, but it's just not viable for me. On the other hand, I have a huge reserve, almost 5.9 million tons is there in, approximately 5.9 million tons is there in Riyasi district of Jammu and Kashmir. But you know what? The problem is it is mixed with clay. Across the world, we have a technology where it is found along the with hard rock, underneath hard rock. So you just have to drill it. There is no impurity mixed. But because of the nature of Himalayan system, you will notice that it is mixed with clay. What is the logical implication here? Many years ago, you do not see here. This is the point you have to remember for mains also. You can get a question here. If you are having geography optional, maybe this point can become important. Why? Ask why. It is formed in the Himalayan system. What is the reason? The lithium was likely in ancient volcanic ash that got trapped in clay layers, then lifted up when the Himalayas were formed. This is the reason why you find lithium in this Riyasi district of Jammu and Kashmir. This kind of geographical inference will make your mind easy. There is something called neuro-optimization in our mind. How our mind self-corrects when you understand the logic. Sometimes you might get lost when you are exploring a new area, right? But if you have a point of reference, like a landmark, you will use that as a landmark and come back to that place and then start re-exploring. The basics of any subject are like that landmarks which will help you navigate current affairs. Clear? So you will have to prepare it like this. These are the important points. Now, the EV logic and the associated policy measures that our country is coming up with. If you want to understand our policy measures, we need to take a look at what is necessary for a battery. What do you need in a battery? There is a anode, there is a cathode, and packaging material associated with it. Consider this like a sandwich. Okay. So the sandwich will require both, you know, this is like the top layer. You have bread, and within that you have a filling. I'm just trying to create a easy way for you to memorize things. So for energy flow, you will have to put metals. Okay. The problem with the present situation is we might have bread, but we don't have filling. You have to depend on others to cook that filling. Where are we looking at? Either we are looking at Africa or we are looking at China. Either Chinese noodles or I don't know the equivalent of African fast food. Whatever it is. Okay? These two. If we have to become Atmanirbhar and cook our own filling, either we need to figure out economical ways of bringing our resources or have a strategic partnership with Africa, because China is not going to give us. Clear? Not only lithium, if we take a step back and look at accessing the so-called critical minerals, there is a difference, guys. Again, we will discuss this remaining resources. Critical minerals and rare earths are not the same. Critical minerals is an economic term, rare earths is a chemistry periodic table based term. The differences we will see later in the next class. But as of today, understand, this question was asked, right? Anode, cathode. Last year it was asked. So, where are you getting this bread pakoda? Basically, if I have to give you this analogy, can we produce bread within our country? Yes, but not good quality. Can you cook the filling? We can create the recipe, but not the raw material. We have the processing units, but not the raw material. We are looking at Africa or China. China, entire world is looking at them, but they are using it for their own consumption. So, what other alternatives does India have in this global value chain? If you want to become the fastest bread pakoda seller, either you need to know the best recipe or produce it en masse so that you become the factory of the world. That is how China did it. But you're competing against China. So what else can we do? The answer only future will tell. But what is India doing in this context? Those are the initiatives that you need to know. Firstly, if you have to procure the mines and minerals, you need to have a strategic collaboration with those countries. So Kanish Bidesh, that is one special purpose vehicle which is established to procure all these minerals. Second level, you need to give policy incentives from our side to make this bread pakoda feasible for us. What is that we are doing from our side? Production linked incentives. For what? One of the components of this manufacturing. Because you can't give it on raw materials. If you do that, what will happen? China will use it. Like they will dump everything, take the incentives and again use it for their economic advantage. Okay. And what else are we doing? We are trying to go deep into the sea, the deep ocean mission, to gather this polymetallic nodules. Right. So, how quickly and efficiently we do this will determine our position in the future global value chains. And with that conclusion, we will stop the class here today.